Hello, malt mates. Meandering, maritime, Mitchell mates. And thank you to Maltworm for that malt mention. Thanks, Maltworm. Welcome all you whisky curious travellers and malt mates. Yes, specifically Mitchell mates. That's my third surname. To Ralphie Review 1056 extras. Extra content, extra perspective, extra opinion, extra information, extra rants now and again, extra perspective, extra input, extra additional anything which is going to help you navigate your way through the single malt Scotch whisky landscape, in which other quality spirits occasionally make a guest appearance. Now, I've got a glass of whisky here, and I have to say, it is absolutely delicious. When I drink whisky, I'm not looking, excuse me, I've got a drippy nose, and I don't want to drip onto the barrel here, because that would just be embarrassing and a bit gross. That's better. So I've got this glass here of Scotch single malt, and it's developing a little bit of Scotch mist. It's happening slowly, but we're getting there. It's natural colour, it's unchill filtered, and it's just delightful. This is a good representation of what's called an integrity bottling, and this is the bottling it is. I've just reviewed it, literally, in my last review, 1056. Benromach 2013 vintage cask strength. It'll set you back about 65, maybe £70, but it is a cask strength, superb quality whisky, which I highly recommend because I did give it 89 out of 100 as a malt mark, and that sort of mark these days is very rare indeed. Why did I have such a high mark? Simple, because it is a genuine, legitimate expression of everything that a Scotch single malt should be to the drinker. Right. Notice I'm saying to the drinker, the sipper, the enthusiast, the connoisseur. And this is why we put our cash down or our card down, either on our computer when we're buying remotely, or when we go into a specialist whisky shop. We check it out, we go in with some information. We're always looking to assimilate more information. It's why we're on the Discord, for example, I've got a Patreon Discord channel which is very active and tremendous quality of content there from a Patreon channel. But there's other channels on Facebook, on Reddit, for example, which they're busy, engaging, and generally, not always by the way, but generally, people are very forthright and honest in the quality of advice that they're giving on what people should and should not buy based on their own experience. So it's a tremendous resource. This is another single malt that I reviewed last week in Ralphie Review 1054. It's Talisker Skye. And I gave it 79 marks out of 100. Now, that's a serious difference because superficially, both of these are perfectly competent single malts. And I can assure you that for someone who is just beginning their whisky journey, or didn't drink whisky very often, or was at a wedding or a party in a hotel and they wanted to finish the meal with a single malt, they'd be very happy with this. You see, this would be too strong and they'd need to put ice in it because it was a bit too much. Whereas this is accessible. This is for the whisky consumer. This is for the passive consumer. It has been engineered by using industrial processed fabricated casks, doing away with coopering, traditional coopering. Yeah, seriously, Port Dundas in Glasgow had roughly 250 coopers working for Diageo a number of years ago, and they just shut it all down and automated everything. So they took away the skill sets involved. Now I can understand why, because still skilled coopers cost you money. They can earn about 40 to 45, 50,000 a year if they're doing a bit of overtime. But the input of the cask into whisky it's not just important, it is quite literally critical to success. Every successful distillery needs access to a time-served, experienced cooper for cask management. Period. Sure, in some distilleries, they muddle through if they get a wee leak springs in the cask, and I'm sure you're aware of this. What they'll do is they'll drill a tiny wee hole and they'll screw in a self-tapping screw to split the wood to try and plug the gap where the whiskey's seeping out of. Hey, or alternatively, they get splints, sometimes using garden canes, but they get a splint of wood and they try and tap it in to where the leak is. Anything to plug the gap. But ultimately, it's the cooper that really knows what they're doing. So what you have is an industrialised product which is very heavily automated in its production. So the entire distilling process is, in my opinion, computer controlled. And that computer is then controlled not in the distillery, but out with the distillery where it is monitored automatically. And there's no harm in that. If you're producing a generic product and you are a corporate multinational and your main profit, and you're scratching your head wondering, when you're making as much profit, if not more, from your vodka, rum, tequila and gin, why go to all the extra expense when 90% of your customers don't even appreciate the quality of what they're getting because they're too lazy? So I actually understand the mindset of a corporation. You know, it's too big. It gets to the point, it's too big and it's got its own momentum. And in fact, if it wanted to maintain the authenticity, it would actually separate its premium single malt brands, in fact all its single malt brands, into a separate company which was autonomous, completely autonomous, and doing things hands-on. Because what's happened is, when you chill filter this and you add caramel colourant, E158, to give it a nice colourful look, one thing is you're saying the natural colour is not that impressive because the cask engagement wasn't that good. Secondly, you're saying that we think most of our customers are lazy and they're going to look at the whisky and think it tastes better if it looks darker. And by the way, they're right. It's true. It's very true. And thirdly, it's chill filtered because who wants cloudy whisky? Apart from you and I and anyone else who actually knows about whisky, we celebrate cloudy whisky because it is an absolute guaranteed statement, visible statement of the integrity of the delivery of the whisky, meaning more flavour, more taste, more smell, but particularly in the flavour profile. You're just getting more for something that's unchill filtered. And it's more than just mouthfeel. You're actually getting more physical flavour. And it's very few people in the industry would dare to raise their head above the parapet and say, actually, chill filtration strips flavour from whisky. Well, yes, it does. If you're around a chill filtration machine, it always smells amazing and all smells marvellous and wonderfully whiskyish when they're removing the plates to discard them because they're a little bit sticky and coated and discoloured. You see, another thing about chill filtration, it actually strips natural colour from whisky. Very few people are going to tell you this, malt mates. So what you have is a moment in time where the divide and the separation between the corporates and a few small distilleries, they are generically producing their whisky from brands that previously had a good reputation in their own right, which they earned, and they're still trading on it, and they're bringing to basically delivering a different product under the terms and conditions and rules and regulations of how whisky should be made, and you get the experience. Now, there's a problem here. is that the big companies are very reactive, particularly the marketing departments. They want to show how successful they are in getting more money through the door. So what they do is they inflate the prices, particularly of the older brands, which you'd think if they're older they'd be treated more carefully, but they're not. They're stripped of flavour from chill filtration. They've got added caramel colourant in them, and they are basically, they're toned down so as to appeal to as broad a base of global consumers as possible. And the consequence is that the more experienced whisky fan like you and like me, in other words, anyone that watches the Whisky Bothy video, that's actually genuinely interested in whisky and wants to learn a little bit more from an old, seasoned old, twisted old hack like myself, what you find is you're gravitating towards these. You're picking up the conversation online, and you're seeing that people who know about whisky, where they're talking passionately, they're talking about integrity delivered bottlings like this Benromach. It's not chill filtered, it's not got caramel colourant added. It's having to said that, there should be a bit more chill, bit more Scotch mist appearing in this Benromach by now. So it's got a little bit of Scotch mist in it, so I'll credit them. They have not chill filtered. This, it'll remain pretty clear, because with this Diageo bottling, they're catering for their market. Benromach are catering for a different market. They're catering for the discerning whisky customer who they don't go out with the marketing. They let the customer find them at trade festivals, in bars, in upmarket hotels, at weddings, at whisky clubs. And then the conversation goes online. And people say, well, why is this so good? Right. One, it's been made slower. It's more hands-on. They use coopers. They're more careful and selective in the cask policy. They use more active casks than this is clearly self-evidently been matured in. And it really shows, particularly as we gain experience. And what really impresses me is just the speeding up of gaining experience. At this particular moment in time, at the tail end of 2024, we're going into 2025, which will be a very different year for Scotch whisky. Because the reason I bought this and reviewed this was because it was reduced to half price. I paid full price for this because it was worth it. I wouldn't pay full price for this because I'd feel disappointed. I'd feel shortchanged. But I don't feel shortchanged paying full price for this, because it's worth it in the smell, in the taste, and the holistic experience, which my palate is rewarding me with, because I've been patient in building up the experience, getting to know it over years and decades, and over 35 years. Thank goodness this quality of whisky's made. It's this whisky and whiskies like it from independent bottlers, from smaller distilleries, but also some of the big distilleries like, for example, Anok and Craigellachie. So it's not always the case, by the way. This is where the knowledge is so important. You see, some of the big distillery companies, the corporate multinationals, they actually do a really good job of delivering their whisky. All credit to Bacardi and to Inverhouse. They do a really good job of delivering whisky. The Anok brand is superb. I've never had a bad bottle, ever. We've all had a bad bottle of Talisker. Everybody talks about it. It becomes part of the permanent narrative. This is what's dangerous for the corporations, is that there now exists a guest list. And the guest list lives inside our head. And at the top of the guest list is Springbank, Benromach, Bruichladdich, Ardnamurchan, Leitcheck, Isle of Arran, all these whiskies that we see in the OSWAs, the Online Scotch Whisky Awards. You'll find a link down to that below if you're not aware of it. Whereas the relegated guests in the guest list, your Taliskers, your Lagavulins now, You're seeing them heavily discounted. There's a reason for that. They're not selling. This is actually a real problem for the big corporations that have diminished the integrity of the deliveries, because as customers we react emotionally. We pour a glass of Talisker and go, oh, it's not what it used to be. And 9 times out of 10, no, 95 times out of 100, we're right. And we'll plug away, and then the disappointment will set in as we go down the bottle, and we're shaking the glass, we're getting everything going, well, I've bought it now, and every single pour from that bottle is a reminder of the mistake you made when you bought it. That's why I would only buy that at half price, reduced from £46 to £23 in the supermarket. Talk about anti-marketing. Talk about shooting yourself in the foot. By the way, there's some distilleries, small distilleries, that should be craft distilleries, and they're not doing it. I can think of several distilleries that they're trying to behave like a big corporation. They're just trying to message their way and market their way out into the market, and it's failing miserably, failing badly. They are sinking before they've even learned to swim. Benromach will never have that problem. It shouldn't ever have that problem. And the other integrity distilleries, and it's not just small distilleries, there's big distillery groups as well. You see it in Pulteney, you see it with Anok, you see it with Craigellachie from Bacardi and Altmore. They're delivered with authenticity. The calibre of cask is self-evident. You don't feel shortchanged for the money you pay. We all know the price of everything's going up. We know that. But the way the mass passive consumer reacts is to simply stop buying what they don't need and focus on paying their rent and clearing their credit bill from all the overspending Christmas on plastic and sparkly LED lights. The passive consumer is now walking away from brands which are half price and they're still not selling. What an own goal for marketing. And the same brand, literally less than a year ago, doubled the price of one of the other age statements. What a crazy message to deliver straight into the market and into the online narrative. I don't think marketing departments even realise they're in denial. The real marketing, the effective marketing, is the authentic delivery of product and the online community narrative. That is where it is now. And increasingly people are laughing at corporate marketing, particularly LVMH marketing, and its absurdities. And there's a simple reason for this. They have to try harder and harder to be more extreme, more cartoonish, more theatrical, and it's just becoming absurd. And now we're laughing at the brand, and it's falling down the guest list, cascading down the guest list. Meanwhile, Ardnamurchan is going up the guest list. Glencadam's going up the guest list. Bunnahabhain Cask Strength, top of the guest list. It's all about who's in the guest list. Where are you in the guest list? If the whisky industry was going to bring in consultants now, the consultants would specifically focus on harvesting online information, because they're the ones that are chewed up to realise that's what matters. Forget glossy ads in magazines. They're irrelevant. They're now just a passive collector's item for people that collect memorabilia. That's what whisky magazines are. To sit in the coffee table. Nobody's reading them. It's the online narrative that matters. And I have to say, it's a delight to be part of that and still to have an independent voice, which I intend to keep independent. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this. It's the tale of two malts, the tale of two brands. And it's really just to articulate what you already know. You're already aware of this. But here in 2024, we've never seen it delivered so stark and so immediate and so graphically. That's what's important about this moment in time. Whew. Enjoy your day.